Welcome back to Combat Mission Shock Force 2 for the 9th run through the Platoon Patrol. This time the Dutch mechanised are up in their CV90s, which should be fun because the CV90 has a lot going for it. It's definitely one of the higher end IFBs modelled in Shock Force 2. As always, the Platoon's mission here is to find and destroy a reinforced squad of US Marines holding one of 5 locations on our map. To keep things fresh, we're also starting from a random entry point along the edge. This time I rolled up another 4, which means we're coming in from the wrong side of the river. Again. For the CV90 run, I thought I'd change things up a bit and advance straight down the highway. This panned out really well because the enemy weren't at Echo covering the bridge, they weren't at Delta where they could cover the embankment from the flank, and they weren't at Charlie, which is the next objective along. Consolidating there, I decided this was the best place to cross the highway ditch and tackle Alpha. There's another bridge further upstream, but this would take the platoon into some very dense terrain and give the Marines the potential to get some close-range ambushes in, where I'd have difficulty bringing my firepower to bear, assuming they were at Alpha. Bravo, meanwhile, is pretty isolated. It's far enough away from everything else that it's pretty much its own thing, and it doesn't matter how I deal with it. Crossing at Charlie then, there's some immediate cover and concealment from the Charlie orchard that leads into a pretty good infantry avenue of advance onto Alpha's right flank through some fields. At the same time, to the left of the orchard, there's a big open field that I can use for some more distant, less risky spotting and fire support. I've already got the platoon's 4th squad with their marksman rifle and binoculars up on the roof of the Charlie tower. It's a good 500 metres from there to Alpha, and I'm specifically looking for those rooftop small teams, but they can't see anything. Dismounting 2nd squad and sending them along the irrigation ditch past Charlie into that corridor of open ground where they have direct line of sight to Alpha doesn't reveal anything either. But 3rd squad's CV90 catches a glimpse of Marines on the roof of building A3 as it sneaks up the right through the orchard. So finally, we've got some contact. Finally, because it's high time we got to fight over the Alpha objective, but also because it's taken 40 minutes of careful advancing to get here. On the next turn I bring 2nd a little further forward because they don't actually have a good view out of the ditch. This attracts some pot shots from the enemy's small team on top of A3, but it also reveals the other one which is nearby on top of A1. 2nd returned fire and managed to dome the A3 small gunner with their first shot at nearly 400 metres, which is excellent stuff. Further up the other flank, 3rd have dismounted and lined the wall just past the end of the orchard, where they've come under fire from a Marine fire team in the Alpha orchard to the right of the objective compound. It's not difficult to come up with a plan here. First I need to neutralise the main anti-tank threat, those 2 small teams, then I can start closing in. I want the CV90s to stay at arm's length as much as possible and use the dismounts to reveal targets for them by carefully moving up through those fields on the right. The idea is to uncover those Marine fire teams and delete them with firepower, one by one. So CV90s C and D engage the small teams from the Charlie orchard, supported by B, which comes up behind 2nd squad in the open field and gets stuck in at long range. At first, it looks like the KETF rounds aren't going to be that effective. It's not that difficult to get rounds on A3, but they seem to be detonating in front of it rather than over the top. And the A1 SMOR is masked behind other buildings, so it's harder to get a target for area fire. Within a few bursts, though, it looks like the surviving Marine on A3 goes down, and a couple of turns later, CV90B gets a solid spot on the A1 SMOR and takes that out as well. While it's doing that, CV90C has come up alongside 3rd squad, where it's screened from the Alpha compound by some farm buildings. From here it puts 2 bursts of KETF onto the enemy fire team in the orchard, a total of 39 rounds, and the contact disappears. That doesn't mean we're done over here. I've brought 4th squad up from the Charlie tower, and as they start to advance through the fields on the right, CV90C's commander gets hit. I'd had all the vehicles opened up to get some better spotting while I was trying to find the Marines, and forgotten that they were still exposed. Luckily, the 2-man turret means the vehicle can keep going. I have plenty of infantry forward now. 3rd and 4th squads are getting into the fields, with 2nd moving in to join them from deep, whilst 1st stays mounted in CV90A as my reserve. The infantry quickly spot the offending Marine team. They're tucked into some dense undergrowth in the far corner of the Alpha orchard, Unfortunately for them, they're on the forward slope and it's very easy to shoot them up. CV90s B, C and D all engage in some area fire. This does a pretty good job of suppressing the Marines, but the foibles of Combat Mission's engine mean they don't seem to take any casualties. The enemy team looks like it's tucked into the corner of an action square, and I can only target the centre of some of the adjoining squares. So a lot of valuable and rapidly dwindling KTF ammunition goes downrange, only for the Marines to take a potshot at CV90D with an 84 or a Law 66. Thankfully, this falls short and hits the field instead. The backblast might have given the Marines' exact position away though, because on the next turn CV90D gets a proper spot and I order it to expend the rest of its KTF on them. That takes 3 of the Marines out. The last one is picked off by the marksman in 4th squad. With both small teams and 2 of the 3 Marine fire teams crossed off my hit list, the back of the defence here is obviously broken. That doesn't mean the Marines can't ruin my day if I get careless, so I spend my time leapfrogging infantry teams through the fields and maintaining overwatch with the CV90s. The fields themselves are actually a little lower than the surrounding ground, or rather their surrounding walls are up on small berms, so there's plenty of dead ground to exploit. That does make line of sight a little tricky in some circumstances. The Marine Platoon HQ pops up on the edge of the Alpha compound near the road. They're in a little dip there behind the orchard wall, and the Dutch infantry can't get another good spot until I get them up onto the roof of one of the farm buildings. With the enemy HQ team suppressed by some long-range coax fire courtesy of CV90B, still way back in depth, my infantry make short work of the 2 Marines. That leaves a single enemy fire team. It's not until I've brought 1st Squad and their CV90 up the far right and gotten them advancing into the orchard that I get the final spot. It looks like the last Marines are on the close corner of A3, but closing in on that position, it turns out they're already out of action. Obviously the KTF fire aimed at A3 didn't just hit the small team on the roof. With that, I've actually managed to wipe the Marines out before touching the objective, which is a first. 1 turn later that's rectified and I can cease fire. Obviously this is a very good result for the Dutch Mech and CV90s. All the Marines are out of action, and the objective touched at the exceptionally low cost of a single vehicle crewman, CV90C's commander. That gives them a total score of 992 out of a possible 1000 and sends them straight to the top of the leaderboard. Their time from contact to ceasefire was also only 19 minutes, which is the new fastest time. The Uncons did do it faster at 12 minutes, but their run had some issues with the small teams having an armour target arc and the Marines were surrendering, so I've put them through the platoon patrol again and they did it considerably worse. That's an aside though, our Dutch in CV90s have done really well here. And in a sense that means that there's less to talk about. This played out pretty much as anticipated, which is the way any firepower heavy mechanised platoon wants it to. Find targets, shoot targets, find more targets, shoot more targets. The Marine deployment played into this. They were set up on the forward slope facing my attack, where it's easy for me to bring the CV90's firepower to bear. Coming at Alpha from the north and having to deal with the same deployment from that angle would have put them on the reverse slope and made life considerably more difficult. The forward slope nature of the defence also arguably took a little bit away from those KETF rounds. Normal contact HE from something like a BMPR or Bradley would have also been really effective here, because any high rounds going over the target would have hit the slope behind it instead of sailing off into the distance. It's quite a steep slope, so any misses like that could have still done a fair amount of damage. That shouldn't take anything away from the CV90s though. The KATF ammunition was excellent. It really chewed up the Marines here. This is why everybody is going all in on air bursting cannon rounds. We've seen in other runs that it can be quite difficult to get effective fire onto those rooftop small teams, especially when they duck down and take cover. Air bursting HE solves that problem pretty decisively. My one issue with the CV90s is that they really use a lot of ammunition. This is something that a few of you pointed out in the comments on the CV90 unit guide. By the end of this engagement, one of the CV90s was completely out of KATF, 2 of them only had 35 rounds left, and the last one never fired a shot because I had it in reserve the whole time. This is partly because they only have 105 rounds, But I think a major component is how the TAC AI uses those rounds. The pixel chop and gunners have a tendency to fire very long bursts with a 35mm cannon. That's not necessarily a bad thing, and it doesn't look like it compromises the accuracy that much, but it hemorrhages ammunition, and I would much rather they stuck to a steady rate or shorter bursts. Case in point, yeah, CV90C wiped out a whole Marine fire team with KATF rounds early on, but despite only having a 15-second target briefly order, it managed to chuck 39 rounds downrange. That's a good 37% of its KTF ammo, which seems a bit excessive. Apart from that, the CV90s were awesome. I don't really have any notes for the infantry, they did their thing. They're pretty much the same as the Dutch light infantry dismounts that we've seen before, though I was a little surprised that one of the marksmen managed to contribute. All in all, this was a pretty classic, pretty straightforward mechanised platoon attack, and the Dutch CV90 mech pulled it off almost perfectly. It's going to be a very tough performance to beat. It also marks the halfway point through the platoon patrol. We've now done 2 platoons from each of our 4 groups, so I've consolidated the remaining 8 platoons into 2 new groups, groups 5 and 6, or the semi-finalists, I guess. Group 5 is up next, so we have a choice between Syrian Republican Guard in BMP-2s, Canadians in LAV-3s, and both the British platoons, Mechanised Infantry in FV-432 Bulldogs, and Armoured Infantry in Warrior IFBs. Bit of a mix there, some very different capabilities. As always, we will get through them all, but it'll be interesting to see which ones you guys pick. That is it for this run through the platoon patrol though. If you'd like to see these videos early and support the channel, you can do so via Patreon and YouTube memberships, whether you do or not. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.